Okay, so
what are we talking about?
We're talking about this word that men seem to have a problem with. It's help, assistance, calling on your brothers and anybody for help when you're struggling with something.
Yeah.
And it always seemed to me, and we're gonna really take this one from a men's perspective. Us having dealt with this as men, is I'll be the first one to tell you that I had to go through some serious, real deep thought processes to realize that I have people around me who will help me pretty much with everything I need, and asking for help at the point that I cannot help myself or I'm not capable of getting to that level.
Yeah.
And I have this community. There's nothing wrong in finding that help.
It's true.
And I don't think it's just me. I don't think it's just you. I think this is generally a problem with men, because we find if we ask for help, we are weak.
I'll tell a story about it, and this is a work story, and I think I've shared this on the podcast before, where I was in a work situation. I was overwhelmed, had too much on my plate. My boss had always said, if you have too much on your plate, ask for help. So I called that, and I went in and asked for help. And he calls to another manager that was a competitor type thing, because we were always like incentivized to do better and perform. He calls that manager in the office, and he's like, hey, Sue, we can't handle this account. I need you to take it. That's exactly how he said it. And I went, well, I wasn't like that, but it made me feel like shit, made me feel weak, and it made me go, I'm never asking for help again. Yeah. Because that's just what happens.
Yeah. Mine stems more from childhood, right? So family, we grew up in more old school in mentality. If something happens to you, you sort your own shit out, right? So there's no crying to mommy and daddy. There's no something going wrong. But now there's a certain line where that can cause fundamental problems in life, right? Because what it caused problems for me with is, the first aspect is there were certain times where I actually needed my parents.
Definitely.
I actually needed them. And they told me they just told me to figure it out, right? Now, in one sense, that built a spirit of where I will figure shit out. Yeah. But in the same sense, when I married my wife, and she was like, you never asked for help. And she's 100% correct. But it's because I felt vulnerable by the way my parents taught me about help, that I felt vulnerable. If I ask for help, there's something wrong with me. I'm wrong for asking for help. I shouldn't ask for help if I can't sort it out myself. And it's not that they said this, but if I can't do it myself, I'm not a man, I'm not capable, I'm not taking the bull by the horns, I'm not doing everything I possibly can. Have I done enough? It's basically this breakdown of yourself when you don't ask for help. And it took years of self-reflection, going through different areas. Now, make no mistake, I'm the type of person that I will try my best to handle whatever I need to do up to a certain degree. But when I get to that degree, right, and here's the difference. I'm not talking about feeling overwhelmed and you just need to chat to a buddy. That's not asking for help. That's just kind of, listen, I'm a little bit overwhelmed now. Can I have a chat with you? And you kind of just bounce off some ideas, right? Because that's what we do. It's not really about expressing feelings. It's just like, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed with this. What do you think? Your buddy's going to give you a couple of insights of what you do, but you're good. That's not asking for help. That's kind of just needing someone just to give you a bit of support. That's support.
I really think if I'm like reflecting upon like what men culturally are taught, I feel that it could come from this too, where we are culturally raised and brought up to say, especially with the boomer parents that we had, you're a man. Nobody's coming to help you or save you. Yeah. You got to just figure it out. You got to work hard. You got to provide for your family. Suck it up. Deal with it. Do what you got to do. Yeah. I feel like it starts there because it's just culturally
100% true.
Culturally, that's just the way we were always wired. Yeah. So what that turns into, whether it's a business problem, a relationship problem, I think, and I've been in this boat, you just go, well, I'm a man. I've even done this with my kid in some degree already. I'm a man. Yeah. I just got to figure it out. And you don't ask for anybody to help you. And even with my son, like there's times, I do think there's a level of parenting that you have to like, I think too many times parents have jumped in too quick to help their son or child figure out something that they need to do.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way.
There's a boundary to it to a certain degree, right? Where my son gets really frustrated with, and I was like this, like I get really frustrated with like working with my hands on some things, and like he'll get almost like it'll shut them down.
Yeah.
Well, you got to overcome it because nobody, like it's schoolwork type stuff, or
you need to learn
cleaning your room.
You need to endure.
You're right. Yeah. Like cleaning his room, he might just get upset because he feels overwhelmed, and he truly does feel overwhelmed because we've been working through that. But like, there is a certain degree where you have to say, hey bud, like you got to do it. I'm not going to help you, but there's a time to help him, and it's just, there's a balance between that. But I think my whole point here is just, there's a fine line we have to walk as parents, and then as we grow into adults, we're taught and wired those things that I said earlier about how you're supposed to be a man and just go work and provide. And so by default, we are just automatically wired to not ask for help, and that gets us into some trouble.
And the thing is, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think there's advantages to it, because if you break down the two generations, right? So the generation we're particularly talking about is generally defined as Generation X, right? So it's the generation. They have a date on it, but
you're saying Generation X.
Generation X
is the parent?
No, is us.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
We grew up in a time before
I'm at the end of Generation X and the start of the millennial.
Yeah, but realistically, if you break it down, right, they try and define it on years, but realistically is if you grew up, right, up into your late teens, without the advent of the modern technology, right? Because the internet only really took off. Everyone really only got
internet. It's like the mid-90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, like mid-90s. But think about it, when you had access to the internet, other than going to an internet cafe, it was more in the 2000s. That's really, when it really took off, right? So
I would say at the best, late 90s.
You know what I mean? So for most of us, our childhoods were old school, right? No cell phones. Your parents didn't know where we are, and we lived in a time where kids were seen and not heard.
Fuck, even just getting caller ID was a big deal.
Yeah. Like it's just these are the things, right? The cell phones weren't a thing.
Yeah.
Pop culture was really rampant. I'd say pop culture kind of ended in the 2000s when the internet came in, right? Mm-hmm. And we had the best of both worlds, right? So we had that hard upbringing where, kind of you have to sort your shit out. You fall off your bike, rub some dirt on it and get going.
Yep.
That's how we grew up.
Yep.
And then we transformed into this, post after 2000 society where everything became modernized. With that comes a newer generation, right? Where what you have a generation, and here's the thing: this doesn't apply to everybody, right? I think it applies to two sets of people. Mm-hmm. You have people who are more on the conservative side, and you have people more on the liberal side, mm-hmm. right? And if you're way more on the liberal side, I think what's happened is not that everything is incorrect, but what you've done is you've raised a soft generation.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason being is, yes, you do want to be there for your child, but at some point they are individual people who have to go and survive in this big world. And they're going to have to do it on their own. At some point you cannot hold their hand anymore.
And they push the everybody gets a trophy narrative, and that really hurt.
Yeah.
That's definitely done a lot of damage.
On the same side, there's a lot of young men that I've seen, right, like teenagers, which are they are so well-mannered.
Agreed.
Right? They say sir, they say ma'am, they are very self-sufficient. So it's not as if I can blanket and say that, all new generations like that. It's not the truth. But there is a softer landing for children today, which in some senses, what I have found is the younger generation I found especially in emotional intelligence, they're way further ahead than what we were, right? A lot of them way further ahead. Understanding of emotions, understanding of empathy, those things are important.
You think so?
I really do. I've seen in a younger generation. On the flip side, however, there's also a misstep in regards to the fact that they have no capability of dealing with any type of stress because the parents have taken stress away from them. And again, I'm not saying it's a one blanket, it's a variable.
That's a good point. I feel like one of the things I noticed in hiring back when I was in a corporate setting where we would hire young college graduates. Yeah. A question I often would ask is, tell me how you deal with a failure.
Yeah.
Give me an example of a failure and how did you deal with it? And a lot of them had a real hard time answering that question because they've not failed. They've not had a setback because they've never been in a position
to have a setback.
Correct. Yeah. And that was always my knock. I didn't like the idea of comparing, you millennials or whatever generation you were.
I don't think that's a good way to do it.
I don't either. Right? I think it's terrible.
You can to a degree see the difference in the new generation.
You're a product of your environment.
Yeah,
you're a product of your environment.
But let's also break this in societal. And the reason we're breaking this down is to have an understanding of why it is important to ask for help and understand the different dynamics. I read a very interesting study, right? And the study posed that if you look at the two multiple generations, so you look at generations, one of the contributing factors is when we were younger kids, your middle class was way lower than they are now. Middle upper class has, all that's happened is since about 1995, it's just done this. So there's way more people with way more access to technology, money, information, all those things that give you a higher, well, not just a life experience, but they give you a high quality of life. Right. So that also plays into it, because the higher the quality of your life is, the softer you land. And, a hard upbringing can, it could forge iron. But in the same breath, a hard upbringing can also, put you in jail.
And we see
it's a double-edged sword
all the time.
Right,
and I use my brother as an example. And again, not to speak ill of my brother and my dad, both raised by the same father, both have very different perspectives of how we were raised and the toughness versus whether it was too tough or not. My brother takes a position that, there were times he felt he was too tough. I take a position of he was tough, but I appreciated it. So again, same father, same approach,
different perspective. Which I think then leads into, where this conversation is going. Because when it comes to men asking for help, right, especially men have been demonized probably for the last 20 years in society, because the feminist movement, which was completely captured, right, by the left and was completely turned on its head. And also the advent is that you have to really look at what's happened within society that makes men feel so uncomfortable.
Can I take a tangent real quick on the feminist movement? I really think and I don't want to necessarily get too controversial on our podcast, but in my opinion, all the stuff that's happened in today's society, you would think that more feminists would be outraged by the things that have occurred because of what they fought for and quickly being ripped away from them. And to me, it's kind of sad that,
do you want my take on that?
Sure.
They didn't fight for shit. The ones who are complaining, this is the thing is, the ones who are complaining, right? Most people who scream some sort of ideology, right? I don't care if it's religion. I don't care if it's a ideology based on feminism, Zionism. I don't care if it's based on, screaming for Palestine, I don't really care what it is. But if you're screaming at the top of your lungs for these things, as someone who is not actually part of it, right, it's because you're looking for a pat in the back. You're looking for something to belong to.
That's fair.
And you're trying to look for a tribe or a cult and someone to say to you, well done. Right? You're looking for something to belong to. And a lot of times is when you see this all the time, when you see these interviews run through, especially with college campuses, they'll use the word fascist, right? We had yesterday... There was some funny things happening with the South African president meeting Donald Trump, right?
I saw that.
And when you listen to it, define the words you're using, right? What is the definition of genocide? Okay, what is the definition of fascism? What is the definition of Zionism, right? They're screaming these words, but when you sit them down on a one-to-one basis and go, define it for me. Right. It's the same as the trans movement. What is a woman? Right. A woman is someone who feels like a woman. You can't be circular. You cannot reference a woman to a woman. What is that thing that you are referencing? Explain it to me. The minute that they cannot explain it, it means what they're screaming for, they have actual no skin in the game. And what they're doing is they're running on virtue signaling. That changes the dynamic. And what's happened is with the breakdown in religion, right? With the way that government has been trying to move everyone away from religion, from control. What has happened is it's looking for young people, especially young people, looking for something to belong to. And part of that, trying to find something to belong to, often opens up into these things that sound good. Socialism sounds good when you go, we're all going to hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and everyone gets everything and no one has to do anything. But when you put it into practice and you literally look at how it rolls out, it doesn't work that way.
And to be honest with you, the way I see this relating to our topic today is I feel like it's almost been gradually developed to making men afraid to be a man.
Why is that though?
Because it's been so tabooed to just be a strong, confident, proud man. There's been so many instances of what's the right thing to use as an example? But
I got a couple if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, so let's look at, I think 2 years ago, there was an article that came out, I think it was the New York Times, and it said that men who work out regularly are most likely right-wing racists. Right, just listen to that. So because I exercise and look of, you're stereotyping people, right? if you're a man and you say that you're a man and you act like a man, you're toxic masculine.
Yeah, toxic masculinity was the
These
thing,
are all
right?
these buzzwords which are designed to kind of break us down as society.
Yeah.
But let's forget all the bullshit and let's look at actually what's happening in society. Okay, so the first thing that we have is women are today capable of looking after themselves, earning money, and not requiring a man to in any way, shape, or form to provide.
Do you ever show Sex and the City?
Yeah.
That was a big thing with that show.
Right, and here's the thing is, regardless of how you look at it, it is a capability. Women are 100% capable of looking after themselves. Now, when they do that, right, depending on the woman and how far they are in their own personal development, they would now look and go, well, what is the purpose of having a man in my life, right? Other than the fact that sex and companionship,
right?
Okay, there's way more to relationships than that.
Totally.
Okay, so now what happens is take that advent. So now men have to evolve, right? We have to evolve, and this is part of where we don't want to ask for help, because the things that we used to be able to do as men have changed fundamentally as we become a more, I would say that in a lot of ways a better society. There is less death in the United States. There is a way higher quality of life, right?
Yeah.
However, with that doesn't mean everything is sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
With that comes a whole bunch of challenges we have to overcome. Part of those challenges is men have to now redefine how they see themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of what we have to do is we have to get back to the old grunt. We have to get back to picking up heavy things, to working with our bodies, to finding those things that really make us feel like men.
Yep.
But on the flip side, what we have to do is we have to get more in touch with who we are on a personal level.
Yes.
We have to become, how we always talk about it, the divine masculine, right? That masculine person, that one that doesn't live in anger, that doesn't live in rage, that doesn't scream and shout, that doesn't want to beat everybody up, that doesn't punch everything he sees. The one that's in control of his emotions, the one that's able to speak with these emotions without getting defensive.
Right.
The one that's able to carry himself in a way. The one that's able to go to his brothers and go, I need help.
Yeah.
Right. How do I do this? And be okay asking for help in a way that goes. So I think a lot of what's happening in the modern world is because our capabilities as men of how we understand how we work in society is fundamentally changing.
Right.
I don't want to go back to 1950. I don't want to go back to 1800s. I don't want to go back to the wild, wild west.
No way.
I like the world we live in, and I see potential in the fact that we now need to become better versions of ourselves, understanding that women are not, we have made them our equals.
Yeah.
Right. Regardless of who's listening to this and how you want to see this, the only reason that women have the rights they have is because we want them to have those rights. I want women to be on the same level as us. I want them to feel empowered. I want them to feel strong. I want them to feel like they are capable. I don't want them to feel like they have to compete with us. We're two different species.
I mean, my personal take is from a faith perspective. Like, I believe that God created man and woman in the way that He did for a reason. We each have a role. We each have a role in the bond. If you will, right?
Yes.
Where you just said divine masculine. I think there's divine feminine, right? And we both agree on that one.
Yeah.
But to me, like, embrace the roles that we were put on this earth for and maximize it.
Yes.
And do the things that need to be done to be able to maximize that.
Exactly.
And I think, I don't know, man, I've had a lot of involvement over the past year plus of my life. You've been in the driver's seat, not the driver's seat, but in the passenger seat, if you will, whatever you want to say, analogy. You've been right there with me the whole time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've really identified, man, is like when I did that surprise with Sam, I can honestly tell you, when I saw her, when I was videoing her friend walking in, and the excitement and the reaction she had was one of the first times I felt joy in my adult life. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of sad.
That's super sad.
But it's one of the first times consciously that I can think that I experienced it. Now, I did grow up really fast after college. I had to grow up really fast. I mean, I say like my college days were a lot of fun and joy, and that's probably an extreme statement to say that, but let's say it's the first time I felt real joy in a long time. How about that? That's a better way.
That's a better way to say it.
Which is still sad. Okay. Yeah. But the point is like, a lot of our generation had to go to war. It's not, grand scheme of it, the percentage of it, compared to the population is small, but a lot of people that I know had to go off and be big boys really fast. And like in your story, like you had to be a big boy really fast to go through a lot of stuff. Well, on the back side of that, what happens is you just found yourself just like migrating through life, trying to just figure it out on your own because you never really got the right help from people. In my case, like I had a group of guys that I was friends with from college that we would talk to on a regular basis. And to be honest with you, I think a large part of why all of us hung onto that thread for so long, there were several of us that in there that were military, that went to the military, is because it gave us a piece of who we used to be.
Yeah.
And it allowed us to kind of hang on to somebody that we once were, that we lost, and didn't know how to bring them back around.
Yeah.
And so I think it kept on for a long time, but none of us ever really, we all cared for each other.
Yeah.
We wanted the best for each other. We still do. We would still do anything for one another. But none of us never really knew how to actually help each other.
Yeah.
And none of us would ever be willing to ask each other for help.
That's a good point too.
And if we did ask for help, you usually got your balls kicked in.
Yeah.
Because it just was, Sue was, whatever, pick to make fun of or poke fun of, right? And you just constantly banter, constantly giving each other a hard time. And so, in some degree, there's fun in that.
Yeah.
But it does get to a point where you're just like, well, I really need help.
Yeah. It's, you mentioned the standing of war. I think for a modern man, everything can be going really well in your life, right? Let's take an individual who, you've got your business in order, you're making money, your family's good, your kids are going to college or your kids are in school and everything's good, right? Everyone's in good health, so everything is good. Like peace, there's peace, everything's good. There's no requirement for you to go fight the fight. There's no requirement to go kill a bear on your farm or to go, people who are trying to invade or any type of kind of thought processes. You're living this good life. A large portion of our modern society drives us always to that one big thing, that big thing that's coming in your life. And there's always got to be a big thing. I'm working towards the big thing, right? But what happens when you're in peace, right? What happens with men when you're in peace and we become comfortable and become complacent, right? Either what happens is we die inside or we start looking for purpose.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. We either die because, and when I say die, it's not actually die. What happens is you kind of just sit down and you accept everything that happens and you become a shell of yourself.
Yeah.
Or you sit there and you go, ooh, I need something. And I don't know what that is. And a lot of times with men that could lead to a divorce in their 40s and 50s because kids are out of school now and, now I want freedom and I'm missing these things that I thought I wanted when I was younger. Most of the time I'll tell you, if you're in a bad marriage and you need to get divorced, hey, that's on you. But most of the time that's you trying to capture something, right? The other event of that is, men do stupid things when they get to a certain age. All of a sudden they buy a sports car, they start CrossFit and they shouldn't be doing CrossFit. Whatever, right? It doesn't really matter, but there's something and that's an innate part of us because we're always looking for our divine purpose. What is our purpose? But I think a lot of times our purpose is right in front of us. Yeah. Think of this. Let me put it this way. This will relate. I'm going to relay it back to asking for help. Why do we fight wars? Why do we fight for our family? Why are we willing to die on that hill for all these things we want? Why are we doing that? Because we want peace.
Yes.
But now, once you have peace, now what?
Now you don't have purpose.
Right. No, you still do.
Well, you think you don't.
You think you do.
You don't.
So, but what happens is how many people get to that point of peace and they go, oh, now what? Yeah. Because we're so ingrained in us that we have to drive, fight, push, pull, all these things.
I think, you keep talking around about the word purpose or mentioning it. That is something I think most people struggle with, right? Yes. Because I think growing up, I'll use myself. Okay, I wanted to play baseball at a high level. So when baseball didn't work out, I went, well, that was my purpose. I was striving to be this top level baseball player. Well, what do I do now? So I go to the military. And then in the military, you're given your purpose. Yeah. Your purpose is the mission, right? So you don't have to think about what your purpose is. You're just doing it. You're serving. You're quote, serving a cause that's bigger than yourself, right? Yes. So there's your purpose.
Yes.
So that's why I think a lot of people do go to the military, especially men. They go to the military or law enforcement or fire department or those servant type jobs because the purpose is bigger than themselves and they're helping save others and they're putting and dedicating themselves to a cause that's, quote, bigger than themselves. But for those that don't do any of that or that retire or walk away from those professions, it's kind of like your war example. Like you go back to, well, now what?
Yeah,
I had all this time spent. In my case, it was a decade of my life spent towards military government work with a mission and a purpose, and then that's gone. And I'm like, well, here I go again. I don't know what my purpose is.
Yes.
Like baseball didn't work out. Military government world's not there anymore. So I get a corporate job thinking that would satisfy my purpose, and it didn't.
Because the corporate job, the purpose was money.
It was the money. Yeah. It was definitely the money. It was, job stability, but I thought I was providing for my family. But I truly was like, what is my purpose? Like, what is it, right? And now I will say, I feel like I fought a calling to do what we're doing now for many, many years. We both have talked about this. Like, I don't know if we've articulated it very well, but we've both felt a calling, and then we fought this calling to like put ourselves out there, and it took the right people coming together, you and I, to finally make it reality. But it's, to me, a purpose, right? And to me, what's happened by just seeking, I used to always think for me to have the right purpose was going to be provide for my family and make a lot of money. And when I was pursuing that, and I was doing well in the corporate world, and I was making decent money and was on the path to being a millionaire with the stock options and stuff like that, and I went, this is not fulfilling.
Yes.
I don't feel like this is purpose. This isn't what I signed up for. It's not what I wanted. So then I reevaluated, and then I went on this quest to seek the best version of myself. Yeah. It was a journey to start that. And I think about our first meeting that's coming up. This could be a tangible thought for that. With the community we're starting. When it comes to like, where am I going? What's my direction? What's my purpose in life? If I'm simply after the best version of myself, but I'm not consumed with the results. Yeah. And I'm focused on the journey / process of it, and I fall in love with that part of it, purpose is a default. Yes. Purpose happens.
And in order to find set default purpose, you may require some help.
Yeah. 100% you need help.
And this is essentially where we
I didn't do any of this on my own.
Yeah. Every single step you take, I can almost assure you, if you surround yourself with people, right? We spoke in our previous podcast, we spoke about energy and how what type of energy you exude. Be the change you want to see in the world. Now, let's say you've done this. What you'll notice next, or at least I've seen it, and I've heard from multiple people who've done the same thing. The minute you change your energy and you've now decided, I am going to be the best version of myself, you've taken the first initial step forward. Yeah. And those steps can be small. It could be starting an eating program. It could be going to the gym. It could be meditation. It could be going to church on Sunday. Literally, it could be saying, you know what, I have neglected the God for a large part of my life, and I want to get closer to God. That's a purpose. There's a good thing in that, right? Definitely. So it doesn't matter what it is, but you took a step. And then you keep adding steps to that program. You go, inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to hit a stalemate. And then you're going to start looking and researching. We're in a world where we have access to so much information. You're going to start researching and looking for additional things that you can kind of add to your repertoire. How can you go? Once you hit a certain precipice point, so you're on the precipice. Now, I feel like I'm tough. I feel like business is running well. And again, even if you're saying that, there's always ups and downs. Yeah. Those are going to happen inevitably. But if you follow that path, ups and downs won't make a difference to you because you are capable of dealing with them. Yeah. Then you're going to hit a specific point. It's a precipice. Yeah. Everything's running well. I'm in touch with my spirituality. My mental toughness is good. I'm taking care of my body. I'm taking care of my family. I'm working on my relationships. I'm driving and bringing good people to me. What's next? Now, the next step, and Arnold Schwarzenegger said this he had 5 steps to success or 7 steps to success. His last success was give something back.
Nice.
Give something back, right? So
I love that.
When you hit that precipice, right, and you're going, now what? Okay, there's a certain point when you hit. Now your job, your purpose as a man, your part is to help other men become that change in the world.
Well, to me, like what I've been through, the suffering that I've experienced, if you will, I'd say the word suffering, but it was suffering. It's for nothing if I don't share my experience.
Yes.
Right. That suffering has a purpose if I use it.
Yes.
And it's like gives me, one of the gentlemen we're helping, I have that suffering that occurred in my life so that I can be direct with him and help him overcome his suffering that he's currently going through. And had I not gone through my suffering, I don't have the credibility to help him the way that I have been able to. We both help him in a different way. But the suffering has to have purpose. So use it. You have to give back, share.
it's probably one of the fundamental important things about self-preservation in regards to looking after yourself on a deep spiritual level, is you're going to get to a point where we always talk about going through the different stages, right? Especially when you go through the getting in touch with your spirituality and your mental wellness. When you take those two steps, what inevitably happens is the world just becomes this abundant place. It changes, but it doesn't change. The sky is bluer, the food tastes better, you appreciate things more, you're grateful getting up. We talk about these things as the baseline, get up grateful, be grateful for who we are.
Right.
These things, once you kind of hit the stage, these become automatic, right? This is how you live. And then what you'll find is, and I found that, you found that, and you start seeing people who see what you do, what you talk about, how you conduct yourself. And you go, I want to be like that. So what do I do? So you start lining up different ways of helping. And it could be helping someone with getting back into an exercise program or getting into an exercise program, trying to formulate how they can fix their nutrition. And we always advocate of starting on the physical and nutrition side, because generally with men, those two, those kind of two, if you lock those two in, the rest kind of line up pretty easily.
Makes it better.
It just with men, it just works that way, right? And
I think women too, though. I mean, I don't have much knowledge and ability to help women when it comes to their physical health and well-being, but I think anybody benefits from physical health and nutrition.
But the difference is with women, their first lock-in is emotional.
Yeah.
Right. Our lock-in is physical.
Yeah.
Right. We're two different beings. You have to get everything aligned.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the same thing, but ours starts with the physical aspect, because there's a lot it's very important to men.
Well, when you're stressed out, if you've got a big thing going on with work and whatever else, and you hit the gym, you just let out that aggression or anxiety or pressure or whatever's going on. You get more clarity from that. And there's so many just tangible benefits from being in the gym.
100%. And this now goes back down to, we're going to go to the very simple aspects of asking for help, right? So you go to the gym, right? And I don't know how this changed. I think COVID had a lot to do with it, right? But I remember beforehand going to gyms, and you ask someone for a spot, the guy's there, he's got you, he's screaming for you, he's trying to help you out, right? And it happens often. But what I notice is the people who will want to ask for the help don't ask the same, right? Trust me, there's a lot of us who will help. There's so many guys in the gym, especially in the gym industry, right? The guys who are inside the gym training, I'll guarantee you 99.9% of those guys will help you like this, right? But it's the ability for someone to ask for help that seems to have diminished, as if somehow either I don't know if it's perceived as weakness or if it's...
Well, I think this falls into this bucket. Pay attention when you walk places, and you probably do, but the eye contact that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. I mean, like, I was in the store yesterday, and like multiple people, one woman specifically comes to mind, was literally in the way, and I just was like looking to make eye contact to say, excuse me. Finally realized I was standing right there, like completely around me, would never look at me.
Yeah.
Didn't say anything. I actually said, excuse me, like, I'm sorry, didn't mean to be in your way, but they won't look at you. People, and I think that's the COVID thing. I think COVID happened, the phones happened.
Yeah.
So everybody's nose is in the phone, or they had the mask on their face during that time. And so we've lost the ability to just make eye contact. So I try to make an intentional thing to be, looking at people.
Especially, I see this especially in younger men, right? There's just, I don't know if, and I think a lot of it stems down to just deep-rooted insecurity, right? A fear of judgment, a fear of retaliation, a fear of someone saying something to them that they wouldn't like.
Yeah.
Again, because I don't think I don't think the children that we're raising, and I even go to say as young adults, even up to the age of 30, for whatever reason, if you say the word, if you say something that would be deemed offensive, right, and they feel offended, they break down. It's the end of the world. And in order to move forward in life, you have to risk being offended. The risk of being offended is how we have conversations, how we debate, it's how we change information. You have to be willing to risk being offended. And what I find very weird with that concept is we've developed a society where we're okay offending one group of people because we perceive them as the other side or the bad side or this side. We're fine offending them, but if they offend you, then the world's it, right? Yeah. And that I used to say this to when I used to run companies in South Africa. I used to say to people, like, you need to grow a thicker skin.
Totally,
you really do. And this is not just from a help standpoint.
It's the trophy culture a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, if no one ever tells me, like, think about it like this, right? If nobody ever tells me I'm doing a bad job, I'll never know if I'm doing a bad job, right? So I'm going to keep doing the same thing that I've always been doing.
100%.
But do I ever actually get better? You know, and one of the things I've said, like, you know, with politics, with work settings, with anything, debate and healthy conflict is a good thing.
That's a great
because
thing.
it pushes you forward. But hard conversations, tough conversations come from those debates.
Yeah.
If you told me, like, I don't know, pick a thing that I need to improve on in life, and you come to me and say, hey, Kev, I really think you need to improve X, Y, Z. And I look at you and go, I don't agree with you. But then I step back for a minute and realize, well, he is actually right. Yeah, I probably should. Well, now I just got better because you gave me criticism, the constructive criticism, and I received it and went, yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah, I don't initially agree with it. But when I evaluate and I go, okay, yeah, he's right. I do need to do that.
But even when it's criticism that I don't agree with at all, at least I'm realizing that I live in a world with multiple perspectives where people have different ideas of how they look at the world, and that is okay.
Exactly.
And you can accept it and walk away.
Exactly.
And on as you're talking about the trophy culture, I think another thing that has really seeped into our culture, right, especially with our younger generation, is, other than the risk of being offended, right, is the carrying and highlighting of victimhood, right? There's a benefit, as much as you think there's not, there's a benefit to a lot of people about being the victim, about never actually taking the steps. It's a form of narcissism.
Yes.
Right? Narcissism. Because what happens is, I get a benefit because if I can play the victim on whatever, and it doesn't have to be something big. It could be, I'm playing the victim because I want to go to the gym and I want to get in shape. But, you know, and I'm always going to take the step, and I'm always asking Kevin for help, Jace for help, whoever's around me. I'm asking for help. I really want to go. I'm ready to go to the gym, right? But I never go.
Yep.
And every single time is, you know, this is happening to me.
All lip service and no action.
Right, because what happens is, in some way, shape, or form, whether you realize it or not, you are getting an innate benefit from the pandering and people going, it's okay, you're all right, don't do it next week. What happens is, the only person who's being held back is you.
Yeah.
Right, because these people you're engaging with, whether it's me or Kevin or, you know, it could be someone else within your environment, if you keep engaging, right, you need to recognize victimhood. You need to recognize if you're playing the victim. Right.
Well, and I think that more people are playing the victim and they don't actually realize it. I mean, I was guilty of it to a certain degree, you know, especially when it came to, like, my physical ailments because of sports and military. I would blame it, and it would keep me from, you know, pushing myself, if you will, until I was called out by a guy that was like, when are you going to stop? It actually wasn't you, it was someone else. But it was like, when are you going to stop being a victim? And I was like, my immediate reaction was like, I'm not. And basically what I was doing was blaming my deployments for things.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not blaming my deployments. And then he's like, yeah, you are. Think about it. And so I kind of stepped back. And you know that to be true of me. When I really stepped back and thought about it, I was like,
yep.
Man, I actually am doing that. That's a good point. And then, of course, from that point forward, like, deep work started to happen and just diving into the root causes.
Yeah. And this isn't even just a picking. Like, everyone does this. It's human nature in kind of falling back onto victimhood because there are innate benefits to it.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but, like, I think what happens, like, some of these examples that people are talking about, even in my own self, is you're saying these things, like, you give the lip service that I need to do X, Y, Z to get back in shape and get healthy, whatever my story. But you're also wanting to be pandered to say, it's okay, buddy. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah.
You're looking for a reason not to do it, and someone says it's okay.
Broken. Yes. It's okay. It's not your fault. But the reality is, no, it is your fault.
And this is the next step, is the accountability, right? Now, how does all of this filter into help, right? Because if you're playing victim, you may be asking for help, but you're not really asking for help. You're asking for someone to pander to your victimhood, right? It's not really asking for help. Once you take accountability for those things, right, and you start looking and going, okay, you know what, I'm not put together. I've got a lot of problems, and it's not an easy conversation. It's a difficult conversation that you can only have with you, right? And there's a lot of tools that can help you get to that, but honestly, all those tools, all they're doing is still guiding you to you. They're pulling up a mirror and showing you yourself in a version you're not going to like,
right?
And then you have to look at that version and go, I accept who I am. I take accountability. Now, what is the next step? And that is the step where you will start feeling more comfortable with actually saying, I need some help.
Yes.
Right. I need someone to bounce ideas, and help for men right, is when you go and ask for help, is inevitably no one can actually help you, right? I know this sounds weird for what we're talking about.
Can guide you.
But they can guide you, right? And you really want to be guided. I consistently look for nuggets of wisdom in everybody I speak to. Sometimes I will speak to a child, like you've had your kids at the gym, and I'll watch them and I'll engage with them, and then I will pick up just this pure innocence, kindness.
Kids
comments,
are the best teachers,
right?
too.
Because it's just pure. Or I'll be speaking to someone who's elderly who has a 5-minute conversation with me. And in speaking to them, I pick up this nugget of wisdom that they're instilling in me.
Yeah.
But unless I'm open to receiving that guidance and going, wow. So basically what I'm saying is I'm always open to help and guidance from everybody, because it comes from everywhere.
Yeah. And
you need to be open to the fact that you don't have everything sorted out. You don't have it all together. And even if you're, by all accounts, from everyone on the outside, we've spoken about this before, and yet from the outside, you look so capable, and everyone's going, wow, look at that, he's put together.
Right.
You're probably still a mess on the inside, because we all are.
That was me. Like, I thought I had actually went so far as to tell people, if you looked at me on paper, I got it all figured out. Everything in my life is hunky-dory. But I was a fucking mess. Yeah. Like, if I really broke it down, I was honest with myself, I was a true mess. And then, for me, I had some big things happen that brought everything to the surface pretty much at the same time. And that was, a conversation I had today with someone. For whatever reason, men across the board, and this is a blanket statement, so it's not true for everybody, but for most, I believe this to be true for most, men have these isolated, massive moments in life that all of a sudden wake them up. They've known for years that something's off, something's not right, they need to do something, they need to make a change, and then something dramatic or significant happens. That was my story. That you all of a sudden go, oh fuck, I gotta wake up.
Yes.
Oh shit, I gotta make a change. And unfortunately for me, that was my story.
Yeah, and there's sadness in that, because you mentioned previously, this is the first time I felt joy, right? A lot of times as men, we don't let ourselves feel joy because we can't just be in the moment, right? We always talk about being in the present, right? Now, it's a very 3D way of saying, be in the present, don't be in the future, don't be in the past. Great. But when you're in the present, right, you have to let go. Yeah. Right. You have to let go of your insecurities, because we're men. Like, how many times have you walked into your place with your wife, right, and you immediately pop your chest, and you're looking at everybody, and you're like, I don't really want to be here. So you start acting like this grumpy fuck, right? Because you're trying to, I don't know why we do it, and I've seen all men do it, but instead of just embracing the moment.
I don't do it as much as I used to, but I definitely did it all the time in the past.
Yeah, I did it too, right? And then there's a point where you just have to let go of that. Just let go and say, when I'm in the present, I'm going to let go and really be in the moment. Then what happens is, the minute you can let go of that ego and then insecurities and all those things that are really holding you back, what happens is everything does this.
Dude,
and you find the most beautiful things in the simplest places.
I was literally about to say, life can be so beautiful if you allow it. And that's something like, I'm just now starting to open up these doors. Yeah. Okay. And it's because you can call it for what it is. It's probably because I was worried, right? I was always worried about the future and what was going to happen and things that were completely out of my control instead of living in the moment. Yeah. And I'll share a story that just happened last night. It was the most beautiful situation where we were getting the kids ready for school for bed. And, somehow we ended up in our room on our bed. Yeah. Sam, me, the kids. And it turned into just a little tickle torture game amongst all 5 of us. And we had the best time, full of laughs and whatever else. And I found myself literally, I thank God for that moment, because I wouldn't have allowed that to happen in the past. I was too get to bed, brush your teeth. Yeah,
because as men, we want to control
everything.
Not necessarily everything.
I feel like I was that way.
But I think we want to control the situations so much, and especially other people, right? Yeah. It's a weird analogy, but let's start with animals, right? So you have a dog, right? That dog is going to pee, right? It's not going to know where to pee unless you show it, and you're going to have to be gentle in showing it, else you might scare the crap out of the poor animal. Right. You've got to show love and affection. You also have to make sure that it understands the dynamic of where you are, but you essentially have to allow it to be a dog. Because that's what it is, right? Now, I don't want to, compare people and say they're like dogs, but You need to let people be people, and people have got their own quirks, their own little. And if you try and control what they are, like we spoke in previous episodes, getting, if your wife does something quirky and you kind of getting, it's because you're insecure about yourself.
Yes.
Right. My wife has this wonderful ability, and again, if I spoke about this 5-10 years ago, it irritated the hell out of me. She will walk into a place and have the most dynamic conversations with the biggest strangers, right?
Yeah.
And when I first saw it, I felt when I first saw it, and I'm gonna explain this. When I saw it, I was almost angry, like, why are you talking to these people, right? Well, you're wasting our time. What was actually happening inside me was I was insecure because I couldn't have that conversation. I was insecure because I couldn't put myself in that situation. And the more now, it's the most beautiful in the world. I love it. I go with it. I find it the most dynamic thing, how she brings these energy in with people, and she has these wonderful conversations. I join in with them now, right now, and I make these conversations because I don't care anymore. I have no inhibitions about trying to control everything around me, especially my own insecurity.
That's the thing, like, this will kind of take us down a path a little differently, but what I would always try to control my spouse, if you will, because she would do things that I wouldn't approve of or I wouldn't do myself. Okay. And what I think any man listening to this needs to understand, well, you chose her for who she was in the beginning, right? So you trying to control her behaviors and what she does and how she acts and doing stuff that only you would approve of or would do, like, that's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I did this. I did it because I would look at it as like, well, that's a representation of me, my family, whatever else. But in the end, if I'm embarrassed of something she does, then, well, why did I choose her? Right. Yeah. So I did choose her, and I choose her for who she is. And then the growth and the changes and whatever else. And sure, there's going to be things we're going to screw up. We're going to put things out there that we probably shouldn't have. Act a certain way. You should talk about those times and those moments. Do it in a place of like where you create safety and emotional safety to do it. But you have to. The whole point of me saying here is, like, you can't control the other person, but you can control yourself. You can control what you do and how you act and how you operate. You love that person and meet them where they are.
Yes.
And going back to, like, again, if you are truly taking the steps in the right direction of healing and improving and becoming the best version of yourself, asking for help from people to help you navigate these things.
Yes.
Because to me, the best learning is from other people.
Yes. You learn so much.
You've come before me. You've done something the hard way. I can learn from your experiences so that I don't have to learn the hard way like you did. That's how I see it. And if you're too stuck on yourself to not listen to someone else, then you're going to have a really rough road.
If you're that rigid. And in everything we're saying, none of this means, right, that you have to be any less of a masculine man.
Correct.
Right. The most masculine man is the one who doesn't overly react aggressively, one who doesn't react, who allows their spouse to be, who allows the people around them to be. It doesn't make you. Kindness is not weakness.
No.
Right. Again, if you're capable, if someone perceives your kindness to be weakness, they're going to fuck around and find out. It's like, it really is just that simple. It's true. Be the warrior in the garden.
Well, when you were talking about the dogs, I thought maybe you're good on this path, but like let's use the dog for an example again. And this is something that would set me off. If the dog took a shit in the house, right? Or like we've had dogs, because you guys have fostered and stuff too, so you can appreciate this one, where we rescue, all our dogs are rescues, and you first bring them home, there's a training period, they piss all over the place, and you're just like, it can set you off. It can make you a little angry, right? Well, what about a kid? Let's use a kid as an example. A kid doesn't know what to do. They might take a shit in their diapers, or in our case, we had one shit in the bathtub one time. Yeah. Do you get angry at that kid for that? I mean, there's been instances where I've been like, what the hell are you thinking? Yeah. And sure, there's been times before my healing where I did get angry about little petty things. Yes. Versus now where I'm really being conscious about, I've done a lot of deep work, done a lot of things for healing and overcoming. And now you actually can appreciate the moments for what they are. Yes. And they're actually entertaining. Like, one of our dogs likes to eat shit, and we come home, she got into a bag of, there was like, our Sam's mom came to town and brought like baked good type stuff to make cookies with the kids and cake mix and stuff like that. The dog got into it all. Yeah. Cake mix all over the place, all over her face. Yeah. And rather than get angry about it, we actually laugh.
Because how can you? The dog doesn't know.
No.
And in the same breath, yes, human beings, people, there are certain aspects, and this doesn't say that you blanket every behavior the same, but people are people.
Yeah.
Allow people to be people. It doesn't mean that you allow them to treat you badly. It doesn't mean you allow. That's obviously not. But allow people, be comfortable enough to allow people to be people. What happens is you start seeing people around, you start appreciating the fact that you have so many different diverse differences in people, and everybody has their quirks and their little things that they do and their way that they see the world. And you sit down and you actually just embrace the world around you.
Yeah.
What does this have to do with help? If you reach this point, I guarantee you've asked for help. You've asked for guidance. You've taken it. You've taken help.
Well, we're both athletes, right? You get coached all the time by your coach, like whatever sport you played. So if you were able to take coaching from your sport, you can take coaching in life. Yeah, and you can take help.
And the where it makes the most difference is the places that it makes you feel the most uncomfortable, the most insecure, the most that uncomfortable, insecure feeling where you're sitting there and go, I don't want to go down this road. You just want to run out the door. That's the stuff you need help on, right?
Absolutely.
That's the parts that you really have to dig into yourself and go, I need to really start figuring this out. And in asking for help, there's different variances in how you do this. I'm not saying go to the next guy you see that you perceive to be capable and say, listen, go down, bawl out crying, go, hey, I need help. No. Research, go read, listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
There's one right there that kind of talks about these things on a very deep level. Find places where you can start resonating. We do this podcast every single week. I still listen to about 6 or 7 podcasts in this of every different subject I can, because all I want to do is I want to gain as much
thirst for knowledge.
I want perspective. I want to hear as much as I possibly can. And what is that inevitably? It's a guidance cry. It's a help cry, because the more I can take information in from different places, the more I can learn about how I learn more about myself and the world around me.
Yeah.
That is how you guide, and that gives you purpose. And what happens is you'll see once you start putting this together, you'll notice how many men out there would appreciate a section of what you may be an expert in and go, you know what, I don't know how to do that, or I'm not sure how this works, and you go and help them. And that carries over. It becomes this thing where we create this giant community of capable men, right, who are defining their purpose, they're that divine masculine that knows where they want to go, and we start creating a massive group of men who are just out there to be the best versions of themselves and be the change in the world you want to see.
Yeah, I want to spend a second to look at some numbers of the population of men in just the United States. But I know of a guy that touts over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
How many people are in the U.S.? Let's call it 300-something million.
380 million.
Okay, 380 million. Let's just say for the sake of easy numbers, half that are men.
I'd say men would be about 70 to 80 million.
70, 80
adult million. Adult
males, 70, 80 million.
Yeah.
Even better. So the group that I'm aware of, in 10 years, he's helped 50,000 people.
Yes.
Men and women.
Yeah.
But 50,000 people he's helped in 10 years out of 70 to 80 million men. If you think, or even 380 million people, let's look at it like that. But the amount of men out there that are just walking around that are almost clueless, if you will, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I just think we one day wake up in our 40s, at least this was my story, and I went, this script had nothing this didn't go how I wanted, right? So I would tell you in my 40s is when I really went on the quest to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll get asked sometimes, and this is why I personally have taken this mission to really build our 12-week program based on what I've done and things that we've done together to help people. But I'll get asked for help, right? You've been asked for help, and when I get asked for help, though, I feel like what I get asked for help for is less about I get asked for help with fitness and nutrition, but more so on the mental health. Yeah. That's where I think I've been really asked a lot more of. So I've been asked, help me. And I go, where do I start?
Yeah.
I got to understand their situation a little bit better. But when I think back to all the stuff that I've done, the books that I've read, the podcasts that I've listened to, even scripture stuff, the prayer, the meditation, the healing, the therapy, the hypnosis therapy, like all these things that I've done. And the whole idea is that like, you have to just start somewhere. And to me, starting somewhere, getting help is listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
Getting help can be calling your friend Jay or Kevin.
Yeah.
Getting help could be
get up an hour earlier in the morning.
Yeah. Like there's so many different things that you can do. And again, we're all about giving tools out there for your toolbox.
Yeah.
But you just have to start, and you have to be willing to say, I don't have it all figured out. I'm not alone in this. Like I have, problems, or I have a difficulty that I really need help with. Yeah. And like to your point, I love this statement where you made, if you know that skeleton's in the closet, like that closet behind you over there, I know there's a bunch of shit in there that needs cleaned out, and I haven't touched it for a while. But I know it's there every day I walk by it.
Yeah.
So if I don't ever do anything about it, guess what? It's always going to be dirty. It's always going to have a mess.
Doesn't change.
It's going to always be there, right? So until you actually take action to do something about it, you never fix it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And just step by step, again, you make a great point. Just start with one difference, one thing. Change one thing. And don't change it superficially and then, I did it for 2 days. Really change it. Really commit to that change.
Definitely.
And then add the next one. And then add the next one. And you'll see as you start adding these and the time goes by, because you know what? There's a statement, like a few statements. People talk about life is short, right? And yes, especially when you start aging and you look back on life, especially, I can imagine, you get to a certain point, you can think that it all went by in the blink of an eye, which it does feel like sometimes, right? But put yourself into the day-to-day. Life is long.
It really is.
It's long.
Sure
There's
is.
time and effort and, days go by. And, you have to put yourself in a mindset if you make those changes. Make a change, stick to it, commit to it, take the next step, move forward, get 14 days to create a habit, 30 days to create a lifestyle, add the next one, and keep going and keep going. And what will happen is, it's a brick by brick situation. Eventually you have a house that you've built that has all of these new aspects. You've built a new version of yourself.
I think my fitness journey is the example here. When I think back to I think it was, I forget which child. I think it was after maybe Reagan or something. I did a workout with a guy that was a friend of mine. Very basic workout. I could not last. I didn't make it through the basic workout, and I felt terrible, right? And then eventually, when I was consistent, that's the key, right? Is the consistent building. And I started with literally throwing a weighted vest on and walking for time.
Yeah.
And then I just pushed little by little. Now here I am, however long later, and the stuff that we do in the gym is awesome. It makes me feel accomplished and wonderful. And I know there's more out there that people probably can do bigger and better things than us. I watched a video. I didn't want to send it to you because we would end up doing it in the gym. But there was a guy that I saw pushing a sled with a million plates on it. I don't remember how much. Which actually, I think I've sent that one to you. But the point is, you can't think I'm going to start today and immediately go back to the guy that I once was. Whatever it is.
I changed that statement. You will never be the guy you once were.
No.
And you don't want to be.
No. Death to the old self. Create the new self.
I never ever want to be that guy, right? And you will see them on your Facebook. You'll see them in real life. I never want to be the guy who peaked in high school.
Never.
Come on, man. I don't want to be the guy who peaked in my 30s. I don't want to be the guy who peaked in my 40s. I want to be consistently looking for the next peak.
Always going up.
You have to 100%. Find it. And you have to be adaptable to the changes. It's not always going to be how strong you are, how big you are, how many times you go to the gym, how fit you are, how much money you make, which job you do, what career you have, how your business runs, how your relationship is, how many women you date. It is variable. It changes. It's always a different goalpost, and you have to be willing to change those goalposts consistently.
For me right now, I'm in a place of life where experiences are really important to me.
Yeah.
Really, really important to me. Creating memories, creating experiences, that to me is what's really mattering. And to talk about purpose again, I think for me, the longest time I struggled to identify, what is my purpose? And for the first time in my life, I actually feel really, really good about where I am, about the direction that I'm heading. But it's come from, I've stopped focusing on what my purpose is. If I'm being real.
The thing is, if your purpose is a thing you're aiming for,
Yeah.
Right? It's going to change a million times. And if you don't change the aim, you're going to not just fail, you're going to fall.
I have truly found that I have embraced the process. I truly love the process.
And you know why that is? Because your purpose is in the present. It doesn't exist in the future. Your purpose on a day-to-day basis is today. Point. It's present. So today I wake up, what was my purpose, right? I'm only in this sliver of time where I am, right? That's the only place I exist. So what's my purpose? Right now,
I love that.
I want to get the best podcast out. I'm fully engaged. We're going to get this out. Whatever comes afterwards is I'm just going to apply myself to be the best version of myself. Purpose comes naturally then.
I love that, because when you've said this, like when you talk about the past and the future, purpose is thinking about the future. That's what, like, most people are like, well, where am I heading? What's my purpose? What am I doing in life? Well, if my purpose is focused on right now, I'm focused on the moment.
Yes.
I don't have to worry about what my purpose is.
Right. And let's define that a little bit, right? Because if I'm focused on the present, if you are trying to be the best version of yourself, a kind, loving, well-adjusted warrior in a garden that is 100% capable of violence, knows that if he needs it, it's there, but controls it, right? The control of violence, the control of understanding violence makes you a capable man. This is something Jordan Peterson has said multiple times. It's not that I want to enact violence, it's that I'm capable of it.
That's right.
Because if you are not capable of fighting and you never fight, it means nothing.
That's right.
Right? It's very important to realize that. So what you want to be is, you want to be that best version of yourself. You always want to de-escalate. You always want to be the kinder one. You want to be the one who, the change you want in the world, you are. Again, it's not something that exists next week, tomorrow, next year. It exists right now. Going and saying, I'll be nicer to people tomorrow. You're failed.
Yeah.
Be nice to people today. Be a better version. Be better with your wife today. Then what's happening is you are actually living your purpose in the moment, instead of trying to, as you said, put it in the future where it doesn't exist.
You make a good point about the like the relationship aspect about be better tomorrow. You know, like today, let's use a relationship with your spouse, right? Like that's very common to get in arguments or fights or difficulties with that spouse, and so you're just like I'm gonna be mad for a day or two, or I'll deal with it tomorrow. Versus, especially I think on the male side of things, like in my personal opinion is we should go first in everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's like I think where I ran a lot of trouble in the younger days was like I had to be right about it all. Yeah. And sure, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but
didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
In the grand scheme of it, it really didn't matter.
And really, if I think of some of the stupid ass fights I've had, I've argued with my wife about, it made no difference. Here's the thing, right? Is I didn't marry someone because I thought I chose her, like you said. I chose my wife, right? I know she's a smart, capable woman, can look after herself, who's my best intention. She knows me more intimately than anybody on earth, right?
Same with my
wife. I don't really give a shit what she says. I will listen, and I will smile, and I will listen to her, because that is what I chose.
That's right.
And again, when you do that and you stop enacting those insecurities in yourself, you realize that when they're talking, you go, wow, that's actually a really good point. Jeez, that's amazing.
And one of the things that made a difference for me, and again, to me, this is all falling under the category of help, and I got help to understand this. When I stopped making it so much about me, and to try to really be conscious of, is it about me, or is it like, am I making it about her? When I show her like, hey, you matter, you're priority, and less about me. You helped me with this one too. Like we talked about like just daily things around the house.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, whether I had her in my life or not, those things need to be done. And when I do it without the expectation of something in return, even if it's just a simple pat on the back, and like men, it's like we do everything for sex, right? We like everything that we do, we want in our mind, like I'm going to wash the dishes, so she's going to give me sex tonight. If you like stop doing that, you free yourself from the outcomes of things, and you recognize I'm going to do these things just because they need to be done, and stop making it a role. You know, like it changes things. It makes it better.
That's so much better. Again, and we're talking specifically about chores, right? So this filters into different things. So, you know, if my wife needs something, right, she says to me, I need something. So she's working and she wasn't able to take food. I'll make her food and I'll take it to her, right? Why would I do that? I have no expectation to get anything back. Why don't I have the expectation? This is my wife.
Yeah, I mean, she matters.
She's not a slave. She's not someone it's not someone that has a schedule that, you know, if you're living your life like that, you're not living your best life. I'm doing it because this is a person that I intimately love in every single way, and I'm there to be of service to her.
Yeah, and if you really pay attention, like if you actually listen to them on a day-to-day basis, there's all kinds of opportunities to do things for them.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of this. I'm still trying to figure it out, you know, still trying to be better about it. But it just goes back to the idea that if you make it less about you and more about them, like in general, it doesn't matter who it is. Like even like our relationship, right? Like if I do more to think about how can I help Jay be better? How can I do things to make his life a little easier? It becomes less about me, and it becomes like there's a lot of fulfillment alone just from that mindset.
And that narrows down into the next aspect of it is part of being able to accept help, right? Is when you stop making it about you, right? Because I know it sounds weird. Oh, I'm asking for help. No. Who are you asking for help? It's no longer about you, because now what you're doing is you're welcoming in others and other information and other research centers and people that are close to you. You're welcoming them. It's no longer just about you.
That's right.
And the minute that you let go of that and embrace the people around you, you'll realize how much you actually have. Because
100%.
A lot of people, I feel, sit in this vacuum where they think they're alone and isolated and don't realize how many people around them they actually have that love you. And if you isolate yourself in a vacuum for too long, eventually when you do come out, there is nobody.
Yeah, and us men have this tendency to do everything on our own, and we do isolate. I did it. Like I did that for many years. We've had conversations with people recently. I had one this week that was talking about someone that is very near and dear to them that's literally isolated, that's all alone.
Yeah.
And when we break down and peel back down, you know, what's going on in the situation, you like, at least I can, I know you're the same way. I can identify really fast the trauma that's there from, you know, wounds from the past, and that person's choosing to not address them, and they're just handling it all on their own and isolating everybody out of the picture. Yeah. That's a really bad place to be.
They're not really handling anything. The truth about that is
you're ignoring it.
You're ignoring it, and your isolation is the mere fact that proves you're ignoring it.
Yeah. Definitely.
You have to allow, as much as we all have a defense mechanism because all of us have been hurt, right? And sometimes it's difficult to allow people in because you're worried about them seeing you as weak. Yeah. That could be one aspect. It might be embarrassed about what you're going through because society or how you were raised says that you shouldn't have this problem. Essentially, always be open to the aspect of, you know, give everyone the benefit of the doubt, right? Especially people close to you that share the same values and energies, right? I'm not saying share everything openly. There's some really people who can take advantage of you, but when you start, again, before you even ask for help, if you start the process of being that present best version of yourself in the present moment, and you live that and you embody that, you really accept that, and you start taking those small steps, right? Eventually what will happen is I promise you're within a very short span of time, you're going to feel better. Yeah. Then what's going to happen is once you feel better, you'll start seeing all these opportunities of guidance around you, and then you will start taking them in.
I like to call that clarity.
That's a great way to state it. So everything becomes clearer. Your clarity opens up, and you can see the light comes in. You're no longer blind.
And if, like, how many people do we talk to that say they have brain fog, their judgment's cloudy, or they're struggling to figure out where they need to go next? And I don't think you and I have that problem.
Listen, there's the one thing that I feel I have no problem with is I'm going to try and state this in a way that made sense to me, because maybe it can make sense to who's listening to me, is no matter what decision you have to make, every decision you're going to make will have a consequence. There is nothing like I don't have a choice, right? Those choices, you may only have two choices. Both are shitty. You have to decide which is the less shitty one.
Yep.
Right, you have to decide which one is going to give you the most longevity, which one is going to make sure that you don't screw anybody else over, that you do it in love and kindness, and you kind of exude a different energy, right? But you always, inevitably, no matter what you think, have a choice. You may not like the choice. Now, when you have those choices, your logical brain and your intuitive brain are going to fight with each other. because your logical brain is going to take benefits and it's going to start weighing up the math and go, we should go this way.
Yeah.
Your intuitive brain is going to go, we should go this way. And then you have your gut, right, which is generally on the intuitive side. And you need to kind of line those two together. You need to go, does this feel right? And does the decision feel right? Without emotion, without other people affecting of how you're doing it, without any type of involvement. It is a deep conversation with yourself. And when you learn to tie in and listen to your gut, you'll realize everything has a choice.
Yeah.
You may not like them, but I guarantee you, if you listen to your gut, you will take the right route. The right route doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be okay. It may mean 10 years of hardship in certain areas. It's just, this is how life works. But once you accept that inevitably everything decision you make is a consequence, and you start tapping into your internal intuitive nature of combining the logical aspect and the intuitive aspect and listening to what we call your gut, and you go, my gut says this. I promise you, once the minute I tuned into that, decision making became almost, it doesn't even feel like it exists anymore. It's just we're going that way. And another way I can explain this is, we are all in this giant river called universe. It is, you are in this river. Think of it, it's in the Yellowstone National Park, right? It's the Colorado River with all the rapids, and it's taking you down this path. Now, you have a couple of options, right? You always have a choice. You can swim against the current and get tired, and then it's eventually just going to take you where you want to go, right? You could go a different route and say, well, I'm not going to swim against the current, but I'm going to try and get to the side. And you can go, and you're probably going to get washed away anyway. Or what would an experienced ranger do? I'm going to go with the river and let it take me where it needs to take me. I'm going to avoid all the obstacles that I know can hurt me, but I'm going to run with the river's course. That is what the universe, God's plan, however you want to define it, is for everybody. When you push against it and you don't go with your gut, inevitably what will happen is it's still going to take you down the same path. It's just going to come with hardship. Yeah. When you learn to allow what you can control to be controlled, that's avoiding the rocks and going with the river. And the things you can't control, I can't control the flow of the river. Yeah. And you let go of that. All of a sudden, decision making becomes very easy.
Absolutely.
It becomes almost intuitive.
And I would take it a step to your analogies on point. How do you translate that to real life? That's why I think daily habits are really important.
Yes.
Because when you have established daily habits, whether that's, we're going to always go to meal plans, workouts, what you consume, when you have the daily habits and the consistent activity and the building blocks that you're constantly working on, when the turbulence happens, the difficulties of life, maybe you did go down a path that, like there's a fork in the river. One side's a big, huge waterfall, and one side's, smooth sailing. You chose to go over the waterfall. Yeah. Well, you're ready for it because you've been doing the right things and you have the right tools in your toolbox to be able to handle that. And the whole idea is that the daily habits, the consistency, the asking for the help, and you have to get help in the right places.
Yes.
I think what's really important, too many people take advice from those closest to them, and those people are not where you want to be, and so it's not good advice. So you have to identify your sources of help and ensure that those people are truly bringing value to you and what you need to accomplish.
You have to research, and you have to really, again, go with your gut and what feels right, because a lot of people are going to offer you things, and people will offer you every type of benefit in the world, right? You have to go with what feels right, and it doesn't mean because they're offering it wrong.
The one thing I'll say about gut feelings, man, I feel like my gut's let me down at times, where I've had gut feelings that says this is right, and I've done it, and it turned out it wasn't. But I don't regret it because I learned from it.
Okay, but that was still inevitably the right decision.
Yeah. Well, that's how no matter what, if it's the right or the wrong decision, if I learn from it, it's the right decision.
The point is, there is no right or wrong. There's just the decision. There is no right or wrong. Like I say, you always have a choice.
There's a consequence to what you're doing.
No matter which choice you take, there's going to be a consequence. There's a nice quote that I always like hearing. It's like, you can not train now. When you're young and in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you can sit on the couch, you can eat Cheetos, and you can watch Netflix, and you don't have to train. Right? Take the easy route, The consequence will be when you're older and you're aging, you're going to feel like shit, and all of those things you didn't do are going to catch up with you.
Totally.
The other way around is you spend your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you really work on your body, you keep yourself healthy, and you keep all those things. The later stages of your life are going to be a lot easier.
Ironically enough, this morning I'm sitting at, I was eating my first meal of the day, and I have a handful of vitamins. I'm taking all kinds of good stuff. And I literally had a thought. Look at the vitamins that I'm taking. How many people out there are taking a handful of pills that are medications? Yeah. You know, and to me, I'd much rather in my 40s be taking my vitamins, eating my meal plan, training the way that I train, because I'm thinking about my 60s and 70s and 80s. Yeah. And setting myself up to live a long, healthy life.
So regardless of which choice you make, it doesn't really matter. The choice is yours. It really is inconsequential. Yeah. It's inconsequential. It doesn't make a difference.
For sure.
However, you have to make a choice. Don't procrastinate, because if you procrastinate and you don't make a choice and you don't move forward, you're stagnant.
Yeah.
But whichever choice you take, it'll come with its own ups, its own downs. But just make a choice. Yeah. Take a step forward. Do something. Do not just sit in wherever you are and wallow. If you wallow, you will die.
Yeah. I'm going to give a final thought here, and we're building this community, and really soon you're going to have help from our community as a resource for you if you choose it's the right fit. We're not salespeople. We're not going to sell you on stuff. But if you ask me, like if you see what we're putting out week in and week out on this podcast, and you like what you see and hear, there'll be an opportunity to be a part of it.
Yeah. And I think the fundamental we can go of, we don't have it all figured out. We don't. But I can tell you this.
And that's what I think makes us attractive, is that we're real.
Yeah. And the one thing I can say about me and Kevin as I close for today's podcast is, make no mistake, what we say here is how we live.
Yeah.
I live what I say. There is no other way, and I know you do too. That's what I talk about here is how I conduct myself out of here.
Well, it's like we're not scripted, because this is real life experience for us, and we can easily talk through a lot of this stuff because of what we've done and what we live. And that's why, to me, more men are going to want to be a part of this, because of just the fact that we don't have it all figured out, but we're very real, but we live to a standard, and you can have that standard too.
Exactly. And right there, we'll leave it right there.
Thanks for listening.